Andy here, and I'm here to bring you all things mundane and makeup related. If that's your vibe, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to be part of my little slice of the internet. And in today's video, I'm bringing you my Q2 palette roundup. So we're going to go over the last 3 months of palette usage, and I'm going to go over my palettes in usage order. So we have 1 use all the way up to a 16 use palette. I'm sure you can guess what palette that is if you're no stranger here. So if you'd like to see all of those palettes, then let's go ahead and just get right on into this. We do have an emotional support coffee. It is just strawberry shortcake. So, these are in no particular order in their category. These palettes that I'm first talking about all over the last 3 months, so April, May, and June, got 1 use. We're starting out with my 1 use category. So we have the P. Louise, A World Full of Wonder. So it's got warm toned purples on top, which I didn't use any of those. And then we have the cool toned purples on the bottom, and I used this middle column right here. So that was the 1 use that I did. If you'd like to see any looks with these, go to my Instagram. I do post looks in real time. You can go over there. We have my Sickly Sweet palette. I used this shade on my nails. So, yeah, super exciting. We can talk about... we'll save the declutters for the end of the category, because I have declutters in a couple of these categories. We have the Simply Posh Coastal palette. I did a palette bingo with this guy where I used like these teals and these corals, and the look actually came out really cute. It was my best look that I've done with this palette, so that is exciting. We have the Fantasy Cosmetica Fighter palette. Again, best look I've done with this palette, so I was really thrilled about that because I was contemplating moving this palette into my singles, so was super happy to have done that look. We have the Nomad YXC Canadian Rockies. This is one of their travel palettes. I did get this in PR, so I no pan left behind this guy, but it took me 1 look to do, so I did that. We have my Unearthly Don't Be Jelly. I did a palette bingo on this guy, and I even used the Dreaded Blue. So that was actually a really nice look. I enjoyed it very much. So, get back in there. And then we also have the Glamlight and Scooby-Doo Raggy. I did another palette bingo with this guy. Did a lot of palette bingos recently. When I do a collab, I try to always do a palette bingo because I just think they're fun. So that is my go-to, what I be doing. And then I have 2 Nomad palettes that got 1 use for me. We have the Witch City Salem, and I used these 3 greens in a look. So definitely need to get some more use on this guy, which it will. And I did a palette bingo on my Paris La Boheme palette. And I really liked how the look turned out with this guy. So not too shabby, if I do say so myself. So then we have some declutters, which I will show the photo of the palette on screen because I no longer have these palettes. We have the Clarity Cosmetics Bloom palette. So I used the palette as a palette and hated it, but I ended up keeping, I think, 3 shimmers from this palette, and they are in my singles because that palette was magnetic. So I ended up depotting all of my Clarity Cosmetics palettes and keeping the couple singles I wanted and putting them all into my singles. Then we have the P. Louise My Forever Fall palette. This is just such a mediocre palette for me, and that really, really upset me. It really did, because I wanted to love this palette, but I hated the packaging. I didn't enjoy the highlighters in this palette, and just the shadows themselves were not great. We have the Jeffree Star Weirdo palette. This one breaks my heart to get rid of this palette, but it's old and I've had it like 5 years, 6 years now, and it caused an eye reaction when I just used it recently, which means it's hit its age. It's time for it to go. So those are all of the palettes that I used one time over the last 3 months. So let me go grab out all of my 2-use palettes. All right, so we have my Cosmic Beauty Muse palette. Did 2 different looks. I think the first look I did with this guy was a palette bingo. So far, I've used half of this palette, and my favorite shade is the shade Muse. It's gorgeous, but love this palette. Very happy to have it in my collection. I have my Unearthly Dreamer palette. I did a palette bingo the first time I used it, and then I just used the last couple shades in a second look, and it's my favorite Unearthly palette for a reason. I love it. It's gorgeous. We have my Blend Money Cosmetics Sugar and Grunge. I think both looks I did out of this palette were both palette bingos, but the first look I didn't like and the second look I loved. Couldn't remember what shades I used. I know I used this teal in a look, which that shade does not get a lot of love from me, but you got that guy. Then we have my my Simply Posh Black Cherry palette. I ended up no pan left behinding this guy, and I finished that off in the last 3 months. So I definitely like this one better than the Coastal palette. So happy to have that one done. And then I have 3 Natasha Denona palettes that got 2 uses. So we have my Mini Retro. Happy to get some use on this guy because I will be decluttering it at the end of the year. So there's that one. We have my version of the Bloom palette. Looks like so. And my version of the My Dream palette. Both got 2 uses. And then we have a couple declutters. We have the Unearthly Strawberry Milkshake. Mine had a repeat of the Whip shade, which I actually ended up keeping. But this palette stained. I don't normally, and like I've used, as I spit everywhere, I use pressed pigments on my eyes. And I don't normally have an issue with staining, but the reds in this palette stained. It looked like I had pink eye for 2 days. They stained my eyes. And it wasn't even the red matte, it was the red shimmer stained my eyes. Couldn't have that. And then the mattes just didn't blend. They were patchy. It was not a good time. So decluttered that. And then we have the ColourPop Blue Moon palette. One, this new plastic packaging is not magnetic, so that pisses me off greatly. But 2, this just does not, this is not the same quality as the old Blue Moon palette, and I just didn't enjoy it. So I passed it on to a friend who loves blues because blues for me, because it's a shade that I'm very particular about, have to be top tier, like the blue I'm wearing today. But those blues, mediocre at best. So I have a couple palettes that got 3 uses over the last 3 months. Let me grab those. All right, so we have my version of the Natasha Denona Sunrise. So here's what she looks like. She got 3 uses, 2 no pan left behind her. We have my Beauty Bay Reckless Romance, which this is my current Pan the Alphabet palette. I'm trying to hit pan on this shade here, Girlfriend, and that is the only shade in this palette that has gotten any use. So need to step in gear on that guy because I'd like to actually use the whole palette. And then we have 2 declutters. We have the Natasha Denona Yucca, which mine did not look like this, but I don't have a picture of what mine looked like. So there you go. My version of the Yucca palette got decluttered. The packaging. I ended up decluttering 2 palettes worth of Natasha Denona shadows when I rearranged mine. So the Yucca one got decluttered, and then the Natasha Denona Pastel also got 3 uses, and that packaging got decluttered. But I kept most of the pastel shades So they're just in other palettes. But that got decluttered as well because I just didn't love that packaging. I thought about keeping it, but I like my other packaging better. I only have one palette that got 5 times use, and that is my Beauty Bay Dark Fantasy palette. So it took me 5 times to no pan left behind this guy, and I can tell the mattes are getting a little old, but until this irritates my eyes, and even then I might keep it for the shimmers. I'm not getting rid of this guy. It's a travesty that it doesn't have a pan in it. I have 2 palettes with 6 times use. Let me grab those. We have the big honker, the P. Louise Money Shot. So we have greens on top, and I just use these. I would use the whole column as, or row as one look. So we have greens, and then we have yellows. Ooh. Yellows. My one complaint with this palette in particular is I feel like all 3 of the green rows, the looks looked exactly the same, and the same with the yellow. All 3 of the yellow rows, the eye looks turned out exactly the same. So do I need this palette? I don't know. It's a really nice formula, and I did enjoy it, but it's going to be one of those that we'll see if I've used it at all or thought about it at all by the end of the year when I do my end of the year declutter. And then the other 6-use palette is my Blend Bunny Lure palette. It took me 6 uses to no pan left behind this guy, and I have thoughts and opinions about this palette, but I do a Blend Bunny ranking this month, so you'll see those later. But I have thoughts. I have thoughts and opinions and thoughts and opinions. I have one palette that got 7 uses this month, so let me grab that guy. So my 7-use palette is my Unearthly Dead of Night palette. This is my Level Up Light Level 1 palette. That's why it got so much use. Still no pan, but I got some dips, and I'm happy with that. I love this palette more and more the more that I use it. So happy to get some good use on that guy. And then we jump up from 7 to 11 uses, and my 11-use palette is my version of the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette. I see I put a lot of my pastels in here, but as you can see I have a pan, and that's why this one got so much more love than my other Natasha Denona palettes, because it is getting panned. So 11 uses on this guy, and I ended up keeping that shade because I did really enjoy it. So it stayed. Then we have a 12-use palette, and that was my Level Up Light Level 2 palette, and that was the Fantasy Cosmetica Rogue palette, which looks like this. I was working on the shade Deception, which has a nice dip in it now. So that is 12 uses. Then we have a 14-use palette, which makes absolute sense to me because I'm constantly using this. And this is my Cosmic Beauty Serenity palette. Over the last 3 months, I was working on this brown, which has since been rolled out. I'm still working on this orange. I have like 6 or 7 uses left on it. And I'm working on this blue, which only has 2 uses left on it. But I even did a look where I used some other shades in the palette. I think I only have 5 shades left in this palette to finally no pan left behind this guy, because it's a travesty that has not happened. So you'll still be seeing this guy in the next roundup. And last but not least, if you know, you know, sitting at 16 honkin' uses for the quarter is my Do Japan My Battleship palette, the Nomad Haunted Europe. And I have a new pan. My 8th pan is that gold, which is a hit. So, spoiler. But she's looking so loved. I can't believe I have 8 pans in a palette. That's 6, 12, 18. It's like a third of the palette is pans, so I'm very, very happy with that. So I'm working on this brown now to hit pan. I'm working on also this orange and this purple because my 4-pan palette, as I went across that gold, my 4-pan palette up here is either going to be with this shade or this shade, so I'm just working on both. And I think my 2-pan palette is down here. And then big brain, I think my 3-pan palette is right here. So I'm working on this purple now next to hit pan to see if that is correct. So we shall see. But I'm very happy that this is my most used palette for the quarter because it should be. I'm actively trying to hit pans on it. And I'm happy that that is the case. So in total, for quarter 2, I used 33 palettes, which considering how many palettes I used multiple times, I'm super happy with that. And then I decluttered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I decluttered 7 palettes. So I'm not mad at it at all. I think I did really good for quarter 2. I'll be excited to see what changes for quarter 3. But that is going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye!